twin sisters living on the streets saved a billionaire and asked him to pretend to be their father for a day as a reward. Hours later, he was stunned when he saw one of them holding a photo of his missing wife. The desperate cries of children cut through the bustling Manhattan morning like a blaring emergency alarm. William Morrison, completely absorbed in his latest generation iPhone, jerked his head up. For a moment, time seemed to slow as his eyes took in the scene. The yellow taxi coming straight at him, the red light for pedestrians he hadn't noticed, and two small figures on the sidewalk with identical expressions of sheer terror on their faces. In a purely instinctive move, William jumped back, his body reacting before his mind could fully process the danger. The taxi zoomed by, missing him by inches, its horn blaring furiously along Fifth Avenue. His phone slipped from his trembling fingers and hit the ground with a dull thud, but he barely noticed. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might rip through his impeccable Armani suit. "Didn't you see the red light?" Two identical voices asked in unison, now closer. Adrenaline still coursed through his veins as he turned to face his saviors. Standing there on the sidewalk were two completely identical girls, no older than 5. Their big brown eyes watched him with a mix of concern and relief. Their dark, disheveled hair-framed faces, sprinkled with freckles, and their little dresses, once probably blue, now displayed that faded tone that only time and countless washes can produce. One of them clutched a battered teddy bear missing an eye and some stuffing in one paw. The other held a rag doll so faded, its original outfit was just a vague memory of colors. The contrast between them and the well-dressed businessman could not have been more striking. You saved me," William managed to say, still trying to catch his breath. "If you hadn't shouted." "Aunt Rose always says you shouldn't use your phone while walking," said the girl with the bear, shaking her head with an impressively serious expression for someone so small. "And you gotta look both ways before crossing," her sister added, hugging the faded doll tighter. 3 times. A small crowd began to gather around them, smartphones out, ready to capture this surreal moment in the middle of New York's morning rush. William bent down to pick up his fallen phone, noticing the now cracked screen, a small price to pay for what could have happened. "How can I thank you?" he asked, crouching to the girl's level. His platinum watch read 9:15. He was late for a meeting with Japanese investors, but for the first time in years, it felt completely irrelevant. "Anything you want. My name is William Morrison, and I owe you my life." The twins exchanged a quick look, one of those only siblings can decipher. A silent dialogue seemed to pass between them, culminating in small, determined nods. "We want one thing," said the girl with the doll, stepping forward, summoning all the courage her 5 years would allow. "And just for a day," her sister quickly added, as though fearing the request might be too big. William waited, curious. His mind was already calculating possibilities. Expensive toys, a trip to an amusement park, maybe even a full day of shopping to update the little one's wardrobe. "We want you to," one started. "Pretend to be our dad," the other finished in a single burst of words. The buzz of the crowd around them suddenly quieted, as though someone had turned the city's volume down. William felt a tightness in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced since he lost his own parents so long ago. It sometimes felt like another life. "Just for one day," insisted the girl with the teddy bear. "We promise to behave. It's just, tomorrow there's a Father's Day thing at school," the other explained, her fingers fiddling nervously with the doll. "And we never had a dad to bring." The morning sun finally broke through the skyscrapers, illuminating the little group. For a moment, the shadows of the 3 of them merged on the concrete sidewalk, as though fate itself was offering a silent suggestion. William Morrison had built his empire on quick, precise decisions. His success came from his ability to evaluate complex situations in seconds and choose the best course of action. But now, faced with a request so simple and yet so profound, he found himself completely unprepared. "Before anything else," he said softly, realizing that his carefully planned and organized life was about to veer in a completely unexpected direction, "I need to know the names of my heroes." The smiles that lit up the twins' little faces made the sun seem pale by comparison. In that moment, William realized that sometimes the greatest gifts in life come in the most unexpected packages, and in pairs. The twins' request hovered in the morning air like a fragile soap bubble. William Morrison felt the weight of the small crowd stares all around him, smartphones still aimed at the extraordinary scene unfolding on Fifth Avenue. "Girls, he began, his voice betraying a hesitation he rarely showed in his multi-million-dollar negotiations. "This isn't something that—" "Please," the girl with the teddy bear interrupted, her brown eyes shining with a mix of hope and pleading that made something twist inside him. For a moment, William felt the world around him disappear, and his mind took him back 6 months to the last time he saw Sarah. His wife had been radiant that morning, wearing that blue dress he loved so much, her brown hair dancing in the wind as she got into the car. "I'll be back before dinner, love," she had promised with a smile. But dinner grew cold that night, and in the nights that followed as the search dragged on without success. The case of Sarah Morrison's disappearance had made headlines for weeks, only to eventually join the hundreds of other unsolved mysteries in the city. "Mr. Morrison," the voice of one of the bystanders, a middle-aged man with a security badge, snapped him back to the present. "Should I call the police or social services?" William looked again at the twins. Their faded dresses and worn-out shoes told a silent story of hardship, but there was something in their eyes, a blend of innocence and determination, that painfully reminded him of Sarah. "That won't be necessary," he replied, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "Actually," another flashback struck him, this time from a week ago when his therapist had commented on his self-imposed isolation. "You've built an empire, William, but you live like a hermit in an ivory tower. When was the last time you did something spontaneous? Something that didn't involve spreadsheets or contracts?" The words seemed to echo in his mind as he watched the little girls. The one holding the rag doll was biting her lower lip nervously, while her sister clutched the teddy bear against her chest, as though it could protect her from possible rejection. "What are your names?" he asked gently, kneeling to be at their eye level, completely ignoring the fact that his $10,000 Italian suit was now touching the grimy sidewalk. "I'm Emily," said the girl with the teddy bear, "and I'm Olivia," her sister added, still gripping her well-worn doll tightly. "Emily and Olivia," William repeated, tasting the names on his tongue. Names Sarah had once said she'd like to give the daughters they never got to have. A woman in the crowd, dressed in a navy blue business suit, stepped forward. "Sir, with all due respect, you're not really considering this. I mean, these girls obviously need professional help, not—" "A dad for a day," William finished, an unexpected smile forming on his lips. "Why not?" The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. William could hear fragments of conversations. "He's crazy. This must be a scam. Someone should call the authorities." But for the first time in years, the opinions of others seemed to have no weight at all on his decision. "Where is this Aunt Rose?" he asked the girls, his business brain automatically starting to assess the situation practically. "She works at the diner on the corner," Emily answered promptly. "We always stay at the outdoor tables after school doing homework." "That's true," came an elderly voice from the crowd. It was a lady with a shopping cart who stepped forward. "I pass by there every day. These girls are sweethearts, always so polite. Rose is a waitress there. She does what she can to raise them since their mother, and well..." William felt something break inside him. How many times in the past 5 years had he wondered if Sarah was also somewhere, trying to survive, trying to get home? The idea that these girls had also lost someone, that they were also living with that uncertainty. "All right," he finally said, standing up and adjusting his suit. "I'll agree to be your dad for a day, but under a few conditions." The twins' faces lit up like Christmas trees, and for the first time William noticed that they had identical freckles spread across their noses. "First, we're going to talk to Aunt Rose. Second, we'll establish some basic rules. And third—" He paused dramatically, seeing the anxiety build in their eyes. "We'll need to do some shopping. I can't show up on Father's Day with my daughters dressed like this, can I?" The girls' shrieks of joy echoed through the street, making several passers-by smile involuntarily. William felt his phone vibrate in his pocket, probably his secretary trying to find him for the meeting he had already completely missed. For the first time in his adult life, he decided work could wait. "This is crazy," muttered his personal assistant, who had just arrived out of breath, probably following the trail of social media posts about the incident. "Mr. Morrison, the board is waiting. The Japanese investors—" "James," William cut him off, watching Emily and Olivia now dancing in small circles, still holding their respective tattered toys. "Do you remember what Sarah always said about fate?" The assistant, who had worked with William for over a decade, paused, his expression softening. "That sometimes it knocks on our door in the most unexpected way." "Exactly," William smiled, extending his hands to the twins. "And sometimes it shouts to warn us about an oncoming car." Emily and Olivia ran to take his hands, their small palms warm against his fingers. The contrast between their grimy little hands and his perfectly manicured nails seemed to perfectly sum up the absurdity of the situation. "Cancel my commitments for today and tomorrow," he instructed James, who still looked at him as though he had completely lost his mind, "and prepare the necessary paperwork for a substantial donation to these girls' school. Something tells me they'll need a very good explanation to accept a last-minute stand-in father." As he walked along the sidewalk with a twin on each side, William could feel the stares of passers-by, a mix of surprise, suspicion, and, in some cases, what looked like admiration. Somewhere he was sure Sarah was smiling. "So," he said, looking down at his new temporary daughters, "tell me more about this Father's Day event. I need to know exactly what kind of dad you need me to be." Their answers came in a flood of excited, overlapping voices, and for the first time in 5 years, William Morrison felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. "Is all this really for us?" Emily asked, her wide eyes reflecting the bright lights of the most exclusive department store in Manhattan. Next to her, Olivia clutched her faded doll even more tightly, as if afraid someone might take it away now that they were surrounded by brand new, gleaming toys. William Morrison, who used to move through luxurious environments as naturally as breathing, now felt strangely nervous. He watched the twins with a mixture of fascination and concern, noticing how they hesitated to touch even the lower racks of clothes, as if they feared dirtying the fine fabric with their little fingers. "You can pick out anything you want," he said gently, surprised at how naturally his voice took on a kind tone with them, so different from the authoritative one he used in business meetings. "We need to look our best for tomorrow, right?" The store clerks alternated between looks of admiration and confusion at the sight of the famous businessman, accompanied by 2 clearly underprivileged girls. But one firm look from William prompted the manager to mobilize her best team to assist them. "Look, Olivia," Emily exclaimed, pointing to a sky-blue dress embroidered with small butterflies. "It looks just like the one from Cinderella's book at the library." William felt a pang in his chest as he realized that perhaps the only princesses these girls had ever known were from the worn-out pages of borrowed library books. Without a second thought, he signaled to the sales clerk, "We'll take 2 of those, and matching shoes." Then, turning to the twins, "How about trying them on?" The transformation was magical. In minutes, Emily and Olivia were twirling in front of the mirror, their crystal-clear laughter echoing through the store's sophisticated halls. Their old dresses were carefully folded and placed in a bag. The girls insisted on keeping them, so Aunt Rose can wash them. "I'm a little hungry," Olivia confessed timidly after the 3rd store. Her arms were laden with bags almost her size, filled with new clothes, and she still hadn't let go of her inseparable doll. "I know just the place," William replied, checking his Rolex. It was almost noon, and he knew exactly where to take them. Le Petit Chateau usually didn't accept walk-ins without a reservation, but the Morrison name opened doors, literally. The maître, who normally kept an impassive demeanor, couldn't hide his surprise when he saw the businessman enter with 2 little girls dressed like princesses but clinging to shabby toys. "Your usual table, Mr. Morrison?" "No, Henri. Today I want a table in the winter garden." "My daughters," he hesitated for just a split second before continuing, "need to see the flowers." The winter garden was a magical extension of the restaurant, with glass walls and natural vines creating a fairy tale atmosphere. Emily and Olivia were wide-eyed at the sight of tiny lights twinkling among the leaves. "It looks like the castle from Beauty and the Beast," Emily whispered, clutching her teddy bear. The menu was another moment of discovery. The girls had never seen dishes with such complicated names, and William found himself explaining each item with a patience he didn't know he possessed. "But," Olivia began hesitantly, "can we have French fries?" William laughed, a sound he hadn't heard from himself in so long he almost didn't recognize it. "Of course you can. And how about trying some other things too?" Lunch turned into a culinary adventure. The twins sampled escargot, which they called fancy snails, giggled at the name ratatouille, and discovered they loved crème brûlée. William observed each reaction, each expression of surprise and delight, feeling something melt inside his chest, something that had been frozen for 5 years, ever since Sarah disappeared. "Now," he said after the last plate was cleared, "how about a surprise?" The exclusive theme park on the outskirts of Manhattan was known for its restricted access and exorbitant prices, but for William, the sparkle in the twins' eyes when they saw the shiny Ferris wheel was worth every cent of the VIP tickets. "And we've never ridden anything like this," Emily confessed as they waited in line, significantly shortened thanks to preferred access. "We only saw it in pictures from other kids at school." William felt his throat tighten. How many other experiences had these girls missed out on? How many dreams were kept on hold because life had been too unfair? The afternoon passed like a colorful dream of cotton candy and blinking lights. The twins squealed with joy on the kids' roller coaster, waved at fairy tale princesses, and hugged characters in furry costumes. William took pictures of them with his iPhone, capturing every moment of pure happiness. It was during a quieter moment, when they were sharing a giant chocolate sundae, that Olivia asked the question that caught William by surprise. "Why don't you have any real kids?" Suddenly, the ice cream seemed to lose its flavor in his mouth. Emily nudged her sister with her elbow, but the question was already in the air. William began, realizing he owed them the truth, even if a simplified version. "I was going to, a long time ago, but the person I loved, who was going to be the mother of my children, she's gone." "Like our mom?" Emily asked softly, her large eyes filled with an understanding beyond her years. "Yes," William replied, feeling tears he hadn't shed in years threatening to fall. "Like your mom." Without another word, the two girls got up from their seats and hugged him, one on each side. Their new dresses contrasted with the old toys they still held, but at that moment, to William, they were perfect just the way they were. "Sometimes," Olivia said, her voice muffled against William's blazer, "Aunt Rose says family isn't just who you're born with, it's who chooses to stay with you too." William closed his eyes, letting the little girl's words permeate his heart, hardened by years of loneliness. When he opened them again, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with pink hues reflected in the park's rides. "How about one more ride on the Ferris wheel before we go?" he suggested, his voice slightly hoarse. "This time, let's try counting how many buildings we can see from up there." The girls agreed enthusiastically, taking his hands in their small ones as they walked. William noticed that he no longer cared about the curious stares from people or the dozens of unread emails on his phone. For the first time in years, he was living in the present moment, without thinking about the past he had lost or the future he planned. And, surprisingly, it was in the laughter of two little orphans that he found healing for a wound he thought would never close. The sun had just set when the limousine drove through the gates of the Morrison mansion. Emily and Olivia, exhausted but happy after their intense day, pressed their little faces against the tinted windows, marveling at the immaculate garden stretching out as far as they could see. "It's like a real castle," Olivia exclaimed, still clutching her inseparable ragdoll. William smiled as he watched the girls' reactions. The day had been an emotional roller coaster, so different from his usual routine of meetings and spreadsheets. His Italian shoes were stained with cotton candy, and his suit would definitely need special cleaning after all the sticky hugs. But strangely, he didn't care at all. "Shall we go in?" he invited, offering a hand to each of them. "We still have a few hours before I take you back to Aunt Rose." The mansion's interior was even more impressive. Crystal chandeliers reflected the evening light, casting small rainbows on marble walls. The twins walked carefully, as though afraid they could break something just by looking at it. "Make yourselves at home," William said, noticing their hesitation. "Why don't you explore the living room while I get us something to drink? I'm sure Mrs. Peters, my housekeeper, can make some special hot chocolate." The girls nodded eagerly, and William headed to the kitchen. When he returned a few minutes later, he found Emily sitting politely on the sofa. But Olivia had disappeared. "Where's your sister?" he asked, feeling a slight pang of worry. "Over there." Emily pointed to the adjacent office, where her twin was curiously exploring the shelves. She saw some pretty books, and her sentence was cut off by the sound of something falling. William rushed into the office, only to find Olivia crouched, picking up the contents of a drawer that had slipped out of an old mahogany desk. "Sorry," she exclaimed, her big eyes full of worry. "I just wanted to see the books and—" "It's fine," William began to say, but the words died in his throat when he saw what Emily, who had joined her sister, was holding in her small hands. It was a photograph, a photo he had hidden away 5 years ago because it hurt too much to look at it every day. Sarah smiled in the image, her brown hair dancing in the wind, wearing that blue dress she loved so much. The photo had been taken on the day of her disappearance. "That's Sarah," Emily exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and excitement. William felt the world stop. It was like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. "What?" he managed to stammer. "Sarah," Olivia confirmed, leaning over the photo her sister held. "She always gave us food when it was really cold, before Aunt Rose found us." William staggered to the nearest armchair, his legs suddenly too weak to hold him. You know this woman?" His voice shook as he asked the question. The twins nodded in unison. "She used to show up sometimes," Emily explained, her fingers delicately tracing the smiling face in the photo. "She brought hot food and blankets. Sometimes she told us bedtime stories. But she always seemed sad," Olivia added, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "And she cried a lot when she thought we were asleep." William felt his heart hammering in his chest so hard he was sure the girls could hear it. When was the last time you saw her?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The twins looked at each other, that silent communication they shared passing between them. "It was before Aunt Rose found us," Emily answered after a moment. "She came one night, brought hot soup and cried way more than usual," Olivia finished. "She said she was sorry, that she wished she could do more, but she had to leave." William jumped up abruptly, his hands trembling as he fished out his phone. 5 years. 5 years of fruitless searches, theories about kidnapping and accidents. And now, did she... He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Did she say where she was going?" The girls shook their heads. "But she left this with us," Olivia said, running to her rag doll and removing something from the doll's worn-out pocket. It was a small piece of paper, folded and refolded so many times it was nearly disintegrating at the creases. With trembling fingers, William unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. He would recognize it anywhere. There were only a few words, but enough to make his entire world spin. "Forgive me. I can't go back. They're still looking. Protect yourselves. You kept this all this time?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "We can't read very well yet," Emily confessed, looking a bit embarrassed. "But she asked us to keep it safe, so we did." William looked at the twins, really looked, for the first time since he'd met them. The same brown eyes as Sarah's, the same face shape, the same soft freckles. "How old are you again?" he asked, though in his heart he already knew the answer. 5, they answered in unison. 5 years. The same amount of time Sarah had been missing. The same amount of time since. William felt tears he had held back for so long finally overflow. With gentle hands, he pulled the 2 girls close, wrapping them in a tight embrace. They didn't resist, snuggling against him as though, somehow, they too felt the newly revealed connection. "I think," he said softly, his voice choked with emotion, "we have a lot to discuss with Aunt Rose." Outside, the last ray of sunlight tinged the sky with a vibrant shade of pink, as if nature itself was celebrating that moment of revelation. On the desk, Sarah continued smiling in the photo, her secrets finally starting to come to light. William sat on the Persian rug in his office, still holding the photo of Sarah in his trembling hands. Emily and Olivia settled in front of him, their small legs crossed, still clutching their inseparable companions, the teddy bear and the rag doll. The only sound in the room was the steady ticking of the antique clock on the wall. "Tell me everything about Sarah," he asked gently, trying to control the storm of emotions in his voice. "How did she help you?" The twins exchanged that characteristic look, their silent communication flowing between them. Emily adjusted her teddy bear on her lap before beginning to speak. "We met her on a very cold night," Emily started, her small voice laden with memory. "We were so hungry it hurt, and she showed up like an angel, you know. She had hot soup in a big thermos and blankets that smelled like fabric softener. And she knew everyone's name on the street," Olivia added, excited. "Not just ours, but all the kids. She had a little notebook where she wrote everything. Who needed medicine, who had a cut, who was hungry." William drank in every word, recognizing in each described gesture the kindness that had always defined Sarah. His heart clenched with each new revelation. "Sarah came almost every night," Emily continued. "Sometimes she couldn't come, but she always told us beforehand. She never left us waiting, not knowing." "And she brought so many good things," Olivia exclaimed, her eyes shining at the memories. "It wasn't just food. She had books, colorful band-aids, even crayons if she knew someone had a birthday." The girls spun their stories like pearls on a precious string. They talked about how Sarah would run small lessons under the street lamp, teaching kids to read and write, how she always had a remedy for pain, a bandage for a skinned knee, a hug for a sad heart. But the best part was story time. Olivia sighed dreamily. "Every night after giving out food and medicine, she'd sit with us and read books. She said stories were like food for the soul." William swallowed hard hearing this phrase. It was exactly the kind of thing Sarah would say. How many times had she insisted that culture and education were as crucial as basic needs? "She taught us to dream," Emily went on, her eyes bright. "Said it didn't matter where we were right now. What mattered was believing things could change, that everyone deserved a chance to be happy. And she told such beautiful stories," Olivia added, "about princesses who saved kingdoms, about kids who discovered they were special, about people who helped other people." William realized his eyes were brimming with tears. Sarah had always had a special gift for storytelling, for making people believe in better days. But sometimes she was sad, Emily noted softly. She'd sit on that little bench in the small park and stare at a picture for a long time. We pretended we were playing, but we kept an eye on her, so she wouldn't be alone. "How was the last time you saw her?" William asked, his voice thick with emotion. The twins fell silent for a moment, as though the memory was too difficult to revisit. "It was a normal day," Olivia finally began. "She brought vegetable soup, our favorite. She read 3 stories instead of just 1 because we begged. And she gave more hugs than usual," Emily added. "She spent extra time talking to every kid, stroking everyone's hair. Before leaving, she took us to Aunt Rose's diner," Olivia continued. "She ordered chocolate pancakes for us, something she'd never done before. And she promised she'd be back the next day," Emily said, her voice growing quieter. "She said she'd bring a special surprise. But she never came back," Olivia concluded, hugging her doll to her chest. "We waited and waited, but she never showed up again. It's been about 6 months. Then Aunt Rose found us," Emily added, "and started looking after us. But we always wonder about Sarah, you know, whether she's okay, if she'll come back someday." William looked at the photo in his hand, at Sarah's radiant smile, and felt his heart tighten. 6 months. The same smile that had brightened Manhattan's dark streets, bringing hope to abandoned children, had vanished again. "She was like an angel," Olivia said softly. "Only instead of wings, she had stories and hot soup." William gazed at the 2 little ones before him, seeing in them not just children Sarah had helped, but a piece of his wife that continued to live on through the good she had done. "You're both very special," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Did you know that?" The twins smiled, the same smile he now recognized as Sarah's, and in that moment, William knew his search was only beginning. Chapter 6. The Search Begins. William glanced at the clock on the office wall. It was already past 8 in the evening. Aunt Rose had been understanding when he called to say he needed a few more hours with the girls. Something in his voice must have conveyed the urgency of the situation. "I need to tell you something important," he began, sitting down again with the twins. "Sarah, well, she's my wife, and she disappeared 6 months ago without a trace. I searched for her everywhere, hired detectives, but no one could find her. Until now." Emily and Olivia's eyes widened as they processed the information. They clutched their teddy bear and doll more tightly. "Is that why she cried so much?" Olivia asked quietly. "Because she missed you?" William felt a knot in his throat. "Probably. And now that I know she was here, taking care of you, and maybe we can find her together. Will you help me?" The twins exchanged quick glances before nodding eagerly. "We know all the places she used to go," Emily offered, standing up already. "Tomorrow," William said softly, "after the Father's Day event at school, we'll start looking. I need you to show me every corner, every person she helped." The next morning, after an emotional event at the school, where William surprised everyone with his dedication to the role of father, the investigation began. James Gargan, his personal assistant, arranged a less conspicuous car than the limousine. They didn't want to draw attention as they drove through the city's back streets. "We have to go to the Italian bakery first," Emily pointed out. It was always the first place she stopped at night. The old Italian bakery was closed, a "for rent" sign on its dusty window. But an elderly man selling newspapers on the corner recognized Sarah's photo immediately. "Oh, the soup lady," he exclaimed. "Haven't seen her in months. She always stopped by here to buy a paper. You know, she read the news like she was looking for something important." Next stop, the small park where Sarah used to tell stories to the kids. The wooden benches were worn by time, but Emily and Olivia remembered exactly where each child used to sit. This was the reading corner, Olivia showed them, stopping under a big leafy tree. "Sarah always brought a colorful blanket for us to sit on, and over there," she pointed to a specific bench, "is where she kept her books in a blue backpack." A woman walking her dog came over, curious about the group. "Are you looking for the story lady?" she asked. "It's such a shame she vanished. She did such beautiful work. The kids adored her. The last time I saw her, she looked different. Sad, you know. Like she was saying goodbye." William absorbed every detail, every piece of information. The next location was a narrow alley where, according to the girls, Sarah would distribute blankets and warm clothes. "Look!" Emily exclaimed, running to a wall. "She used to mark our heights here every month to see if we were growing." On the brick wall were several pencil marks with dates and initials. William ran his fingers over them, imagining Sarah kneeling there, carefully measuring each child, celebrating every inch of growth. At a small, worn-out diner, an elderly waitress recognized the photo immediately. "She came here all the time," the woman said, serving the girls hot chocolate on the house. She'd order coffee and spend hours writing in her notebook. Sometimes she cried looking at a picture, but whenever a child showed up, she'd wipe her tears and smile. "What kind of things did she write?" William asked, his heart quickening. "I can't say for sure, but on the last day, she tore out several pages from the notebook and threw them away. She seemed nervous, not herself. Ordered special pancakes for these little ones." The waitress smiled at the twins, "and spent a long time just looking at them, like she wanted to memorize every detail." As the day progressed, they visited more places. The shelter where Sarah sometimes found beds for homeless people, the pharmacy where she bought medicine for those in need, the public library where she taught children to read. Everywhere the story was the same. Sarah, as everyone knew her, she had touched lives, transformed realities, yet always kept a certain distance, a mysterious aura. "There's one more place," Olivia said as the sun began to set. "The most important one." The girls led William to a small vacant lot that had been turned into a makeshift garden. There were flowers growing in old cans, a tire swing, and a small vegetable patch in crates. "Sarah called this the Garden of Dreams," Emily explained. "She taught us how to plant flowers here. She said that even in the hardest places, beautiful things could grow." William looked around with tears in his eyes. It was so characteristic of Sarah, to turn an abandoned lot into a place of hope. "On the last day," Olivia continued, her voice growing softer, "she brought new seeds. She said that by the time the flowers bloomed, she'd be back." We planted everything carefully, watered it every day. But when the flowers grew, she still wasn't here. William knelt in the little garden, touching the petals of the flowers Sarah never got to see bloom. Somewhere she was alive. She had spent 6 months helping others, being a light in the darkness, and until she vanished again. "She'll come back, right?" Emily asked, her little hand finding William's. "We'll find her," he promised, pulling them both into a hug. "And when we do, we'll have a whole family to take care of this garden." On the way back, William reflected on everything they had discovered. Sarah was alive, that much was certain. She had spent the past months doing exactly what she always wanted, helping people, making a difference in others' lives. But why leave so suddenly? Why abandon even the children she loved so much? "You know something," he said to the twins as he drove them back to Aunt Rose. "Sarah would be so proud to see how you held on to all these memories, how you kept alive everything she taught you." The girls smiled, that smile he had come to recognize so well. And William knew, with a certainty that came from the depths of his soul, that this was just the beginning of the search. Somewhere, Sarah was waiting to be found, and this time, he wouldn't rest until he brought her home. Glancing in the rearview mirror, he saw the twins dozing in the back seat, worn out after the long day of sleuthing. They were so small, yet so strong, just like Sarah. They had faced the world with courage and kindness in their hearts. "I'm going to find you," he whispered to the photo of Sarah on the dashboard, "and this time I won't let you go." The reception area at St. Luke's Municipal Hospital was bustling on that Monday morning. William straightened his tie, feeling oddly nervous. Emily and Olivia stood close by, their small hands tightly gripping his, as though afraid he might disappear too. "It was here," Emily whispered, pointing to the glass doors of the emergency room. "We saw them bring her in." The girl's memory had been triggered during breakfast, when Olivia casually mentioned they'd seen an ambulance take Sarah away a few months back. William nearly spilled his coffee upon hearing that. "Good morning," he said to the receptionist, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I need information about a patient who was admitted here about 6 months ago." The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with purple-framed glasses, eyed him skeptically. "Do you have the patient's name?" "Actually," William hesitated, "she had no ID. A woman around 35, brown hair." "Ah," the receptionist interrupted, her eyes lighting with recognition. "The Jane Doe in room 505. I remember her. Everyone in the hospital talked about that case." William felt his legs go weak. He had to steady himself against the counter. "Why did everyone talk about her?" Olivia asked, her childish curiosity popping up. The receptionist looked at the girls, then at William as though deciding how much to divulge. "Well, it's not every day we get such a mysterious patient. And she was special, you know, even with no memory. She was always helping the other patients." "No memory," William repeated, his voice nearly failing. "Yes, traumatic amnesia," came a new voice joining the conversation. A grey-haired nurse had approached, drawn by their discussion. "I'm Clara. I looked after her during her stay." "Are you relatives?" William quickly explained the situation, showing them Sarah's photo. Nurse Clara's eyes widened with recognition. "That's her!" she exclaimed. "She stayed with us for almost 3 weeks. Found unconscious near Central Park. No documents, nothing to identify her." "How was she?" William could barely contain the tremor in his voice. Clara led them to a more private area, a small, empty waiting room. The twins sat quietly, still hugging their teddy bear and rag doll. "Physically, she recovered well," Clara explained. "She had some bruises and a mild concussion. But her memory, it was as if there was a wall blocking her past. She remembered basic things like reading and writing, but nothing personal. And even so, she helped everyone," the receptionist, who had joined them, added. "She spent hours reading to kids in pediatrics, comforting worried families in the waiting room." William closed his eyes for a moment. It was undoubtedly Sarah. Even without her memories, her essence remained the same, that instinctive need to help others. "Where did she go after she was discharged?" he asked, dreading the answer. Clara hesitated. "Typically, cases like hers are sent to social services, but she met a visiting nun, Sister Maria from the convent of Saint Clare on the outskirts of the city. She offered her a place to stay until her memory returned. Emily and Olivia exchanged excited looks. "Can we go there?" they asked in unison. "Before you go," Clara said, standing up, "there's something you should see. Wait here a moment." The nurse returned minutes later with a cardboard box. These were her belongings when she arrived. Nothing that could ID her, but she pulled out a battered notebook. She wrote a lot in this while she was here. William took the notebook with trembling hands. The pages were filled with delicate handwriting. They weren't memories, but observations about patients. Small stories of people she met in the hospital. Reflections on the strange feeling of not knowing who she was. "There's something special on the last page," Clara said gently. William flipped to the end. There, Sarah had drawn a garden. Not just any garden, but an exact depiction of the garden of dreams she'd created with the street children. Among the drawn flowers was a single line. "I don't know who I am, but I know there is a garden somewhere waiting for me." Her subconscious was trying to reach her, Clara observed. During her stay, she often talked about gardens and children. She said she felt like she'd left something very important behind, but couldn't remember what. "And the convent?" William asked, carefully placing the notebook back into the box. "Are you sure that's where she went?" Clara nodded. Sister Maria came every Wednesday. The two formed a special connection. In her last week here, she started having recurring dreams about a garden and two little girls. Sister Maria thought the calm of the convent might help her recover her memories naturally. William looked at the twins, who were staring at the notebook in fascination. They were the two little girls from Sarah's dreams. Even without her memories, even lost to herself, part of her still remembered. "The convent is about 2 hours away," Clara said, handing William a slip of paper with the address. "Sister Maria is the superior there. If anyone knows where she is now, it's her." As they left the hospital, William felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. Sarah had been alive and so close for those weeks, and now maybe they were finally close to finding her. "Will she remember us?" Olivia asked quietly as they walked to the car. William squeezed the little girl's hand gently. "Her heart already does," he replied. "That's why she dreamed about you." In the back seat, the twins began excitedly planning what they would say when they found Sarah. William glanced one more time at the hospital in the rearview mirror, silently thanking the staff who had cared for her. Their next destination was the convent of St. Clare, and this time he was sure they were closer than ever to bringing Sarah, memories or not, back home. William's black Mercedes looked strangely out of place on the narrow streets of Millbrook. The modest houses, with their peeling wooden fences and small but well-tended gardens, spoke of simple lives and hard work. It was a world completely different from the luxury penthouses and mirrored skyscrapers William usually frequented. "Look," Emily exclaimed from the back seat, pointing to a small park. "It looks just like our garden of dreams." William slowed down, taking in the scene. Indeed, there were flowers growing out of colorful cans and a small tire swing. His heart sped up. Could this be another sign of Sarah's touch? "There's another one!" Olivia practically jumped in her seat. "And another one there too." As they drove through the neighborhood, they began to notice a pattern. Small improvised gardens appeared in the most unlikely places. An empty lot turned into a community veggie patch, a bed of flowers in front of a worn-out public school, decorative flower pots at the entrance of a seniors' shelter. "It's her way," William murmured to himself more than to the girls, turning abandoned spots into something beautiful. They stopped in front of a roadside family diner. The girls begged for a snack, and William realized it was well past lunchtime. Inside, it was simple but clean, with formica tables and red stools faded by time. "Can I help you?" An elderly waitress approached, her name tag identifying her as Rose, though not the same Aunt Rose the girls knew. Her hair was white, tied in a bun, and she wore kind eyes behind her glasses. "Actually," William began hesitantly, taking Sarah's photo from his pocket, "we're looking for someone." The waitress's eyes widened in recognition. "Oh, the garden lady. She comes here sometimes, always brings fresh flowers for the tables." William felt his heart leap. When was the last time you saw her? A few days ago, Rose replied, handing milkshakes to the girls without being asked. She helps with the community garden nearby. A lovely person, even though she still doesn't remember who she is. The twins exchanged excited looks as they sipped their milkshakes. William barely touched his coffee, absorbing every word. She still hasn't regained her memory. Rose shook her head. Not completely. But sometimes she talks about a special garden and two little girls. She looked meaningfully at Emily and Olivia. You look a lot like her description. Following Rose's directions, they made their way to the community garden. The place was impressive in its simple organization. Rows of thriving vegetables, flowers lining the paths, and various people working together in harmony, some wearing t-shirts with a Gardens of Hope logo. A middle-aged woman, introducing herself as Martha, the project coordinator, confirmed that Sarah had been there that morning. She has a special touch with plants, Martha explained, showing them a particularly beautiful vegetable bed. And with people too. She organized a whole distribution system for these veggies to go to families in need. Where did she go afterwards? William asked, noticing the twins were already mingling, helping a little girl water some seedlings. She said she was going to visit St. Francis Shelter, Martha replied. She always brings fresh flowers to the seniors on Wednesdays. The shelter was at the end of a quiet street, an old but well-kept building with a wide porch where a few seniors sat enjoying the sun. In the front garden, William immediately recognized Sarah's style. Flowers in colorful cans, small repurposed benches, a tire swing. Oh, you're looking for our flower fairy. An elderly lady smiled from her seat on the porch. She was here earlier, but she left. Said she had something special to prepare at the convent. William felt tension build in his chest. They were so close. The convent of St. Clair was on a small hill visible from almost anywhere in town. Its white walls reflected the afternoon sun, giving the place an almost ethereal aura. Does she live there? Olivia asked, her eyes fixed on the distant building. Not exactly, the elderly woman replied, but she spends a lot of time in the convent garden. They say she's creating something special up there. As they headed back to the car, William noticed how the entire neighborhood seemed to have been touched by Sarah's presence. It was as though she had left little pieces of her heart on every corner, in every improvised garden, with every person she helped. She's still the same, Emily observed wisely, surprising William with her insight. Even if she doesn't remember who she is. The sun was starting to set as they finally drove toward the convent. Shadows stretched long, painting the sky in golden and pink tones. William felt his heart pounding. After 6 months of absence, after 5 years of searching, they were minutes away from finding Sarah. What if she doesn't remember us? Olivia asked quietly, voicing the fear they all shared. William looked in the rearview mirror at the two little ones in the back seat. Their expressions a mix of hope and apprehension. She already does, he said softly. Maybe not in her mind, but in her heart. That's why she keeps creating gardens, helping people, telling stories. The car began climbing the winding road leading up to the convent. Each turn brought them closer to the reunion they'd all been waiting for. William reflected on how his life had changed in just a few days, from a solitary businessman focused only on work, to a man rediscovering the meaning of family, guided by two little orphans and by the love he never stopped feeling for Sarah. The convent gates were visible when Emily let out a joyful cry. Look, another garden. Indeed, beside the main gate, a new garden was taking shape. Colorful cans held freshly planted flowers, a partially built tire swing gently swayed in the evening breeze, and in the center, a handmade sign read, Garden of Dreams, 2, because some dreams deserve a second chance. William parked the car, his hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. They were finally there. Ready? He asked the girls. Emily and Olivia nodded, clutching their inseparable companions, the teddy bear and the doll. Together, they walked toward the convent gates, where a new chapter of their story was about to begin. Sister Maria greeted them in the convent garden, her white habit fluttering gently in the late afternoon breeze. Her kind eyes studied the trio for a moment before she spoke. She's in the back garden, the nun said softly. as she is at this time every day. William felt his heart race. The twins squeezed his hands tighter. Does she know we're coming?" he asked, his voice betraying his nerves. The nun shook her head. "No, I thought it best not to warn her. She gets anxious when we try to talk about her past." They followed Sister Maria down a side corridor of the convent, the sound of their footsteps echoing against ancient walls. The fragrance of flowers grew stronger as they neared the back of the building, and then they saw her. Sarah was kneeling among flower beds, wearing a simple light blue dress and a straw hat for sun protection. She hummed softly as she planted daisy seedlings, appearing so peaceful, so different from the elegant businesswoman William remembered, yet unmistakably her. Emily was the first to react. "Sarah!" she shouted, letting go of William's hand and running toward her with Olivia right behind. Sarah lifted her head at the sound of her name. Her eyes widened when she saw the two girls rushing toward her. For a moment, she froze, as if watching a dream come to life. I know you," she murmured, standing up slowly. "From my visions, from my dreams." The twins stopped a few steps away, suddenly hesitant. Sarah looked from one to the other, her eyes filled with a mixture of recognition and confusion. "Don't you remember us?" Olivia asked softly, clutching her rag doll to her chest. Sarah took a step toward them, her hands trembling slightly. "I see you both every night in my dreams. Two little girls in a garden, like this one." "The Garden of Dreams," Emily exclaimed. "You created it for us. Remember, you always said that even in the hardest places, beautiful things could grow." A flicker of something, memory, recognition, sparked in Sarah's eyes. She raised her hand to her head, as if feeling pain. That's when she noticed William standing a few yards behind the girls. Their gazes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. She began, her voice trembling. "I feel like I should know you." William took a step forward, fighting the urge to run to her and wrap her in his arms. "My name is William," he said gently. "And we were—" "No," Sister Maria interjected kindly. "Let her memories return in their own time." Sarah turned her gaze back to the twins, who were now closer. Emily still clutched her teddy bear in one hand, stretching the other toward Sarah. "You always read us stories," she said, "every night after handing out hot soup. Do you remember the story of the princess who saved the kingdom? That was our favorite. And you did different voices for all the characters," Olivia added, a timid smile on her face. "And you always brought colorful band-aids when someone got hurt." Sarah closed her eyes, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress. I remember children's voices. Laughter. Flowers growing in old cans. And the tire swing," the twins exclaimed in unison. Sarah opened her eyes abruptly. "The swing. Yes. And there was a notebook. I wrote everything down in it. All the kids' names. What each one needed." William pulled something from his jacket pocket, the notebook Nurse Clara had given him at the hospital. Sarah recognized it immediately. "My journal," she whispered, extending a trembling hand to take it. She flipped through the pages slowly, her fingers tracing the words she had written. Tears began rolling down her cheeks as she reached the garden drawing on the last page. "I planted flowers," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "not just to make places prettier, but to give hope, to show that beauty can bloom anywhere." Emily and Olivia stepped closer, each holding one of Sarah's hands. The contact seemed to trigger something in her. A sob escaped her lips as she pulled them into a tight embrace. "My little ones," she murmured through tears. "How could I forget you?" William watched the scene, tears streaming down his own face. Sister Maria placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Give her time," the nun advised softly. "Her memories are returning, but patience is key." Still hugging the girls, Sarah raised her eyes to William. There was something different in her gaze now, not full recognition, but a spark of familiarity. She hesitated. "You were in my dreams too, but I couldn't see your face clearly. I just felt you were someone important." William smiled through his tears. "We have time," he said, "all the time in the world." The twins began showing Sarah around the garden, pointing out its similarities to the original Garden of Dreams. She followed them, still holding their hands, occasionally pausing as a memory overtook her. A familiar smell, a specific word, a gesture. The sun began to set, bathing the sky in pink tones, much like the day Sarah disappeared 6 months prior. But now, as William watched his wife and the twins walk among the flowers, he knew a new chapter was beginning. Our chapter of new beginnings, of lost and found memories, of bonds that even forgetfulness could not sever. And there, in the convent garden, as the first stars appeared in the sky, an unlikely family began to reconnect. One moment, one memory, one blossom at a time. The convent library was a cozy place, with tall, dark wooden shelves reaching up to the ceiling and large windows letting in soft morning light. Sarah sat in an old armchair, flipping through her notebook, while the twins played quietly on the nearby rug. William watched from a nearby chair, trying to contain the anxiety he felt. "This handwriting," Sarah murmured, running her fingers over a page. "Sometimes when I write, I surprise myself because it feels so familiar." "You've always had beautiful handwriting," William commented gently. "You used to make notes in every book you read." Sarah raised her eyes to him, a crease of concentration forming on her forehead. I used to like reading at night, with a cup of chamomile tea." William felt his heart quicken. "Yes. And you always left colorful bookmarks on all the pages you found important." A spark passed through Sarah's eyes. She closed them for a moment, as if trying to grab a fleeing memory. "There was a library," she said slowly. "A big one, with a view of the city. And I would stay up late reading, waiting for someone." "You waited for me to come home from work," William answered gently. "I always got back late. And you'd say, 'That books were better company than a workaholic,'" Sarah finished automatically, then opened her eyes wide, startled by her own words. Emily looked up from her drawing. "Sarah always read to us too, every night, no matter if it was cold or raining." "That's right," Olivia chimed in eagerly, "and she did different voices for the characters. The big bad wolf was the best." Sarah smiled, a smile that mixed joy with confusion. "I remember sitting on a bench in a park with a lot of children around. It was cold, but there were blankets." "You always brought clean blankets," Emily confirmed, "and hot soup in a big thermos." "The soup!" Sarah exclaimed suddenly, putting a hand to her head. "I made it in a huge kitchen with a window overlooking a garden. There were climbing roses." "Our house," William said softly. "You used to spend hours cooking on Sundays, preparing food for the whole week." Sarah closed her eyes again, this time more tightly. "There's so much noise in my head, so many different images." "Don't force it," William advised, seeing the pained look on her face. "They're coming back on their own." "But it's all so confusing," she whispered. "It's like a puzzle with pieces that don't fit. I see a woman in elegant clothes at important meetings, then the same woman, me, sleeping on a park bench to protect 2 children from the cold." The twins approached, sitting at Sarah's feet. Emily held her teddy bear firmly. "Do you remember the first time you found us?" she asked hopefully. Sarah frowned in concentration. "It was snowing. No, it was just very cold, but not snowing. And there was the smell of bread." "The Italian bakery," Olivia exclaimed. "We were so cold and hungry, and you showed up like an angel." "With hot soup and blankets," Sarah murmured, the memory growing clearer. "And you both were so scared, so little, I couldn't just walk by." "You never walked by anyone who needed help," William commented, a sad smile on his face. "It was one of the many things I admired about you, even when we disagreed on priorities," Sarah finished, another memory surfacing. "You said I couldn't save the world alone, and I said that someone had to try," they both said in unison. Sarah brought her hands to her face, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why does everything feel so close and yet so far away? How can I have lived 2 such different lives?" "They weren't different," Emily said wisely, placing her small hand on Sarah's. "They were you being you, just in different ways." William noticed how the little girl's simple words seemed to soothe Sarah. It was true. Whether as a successful businesswoman or the protector of street kids, she had always been essentially the same person. Sometimes, Sarah began tentatively, when I'm in the garden here at the convent, I have these moments. Like I can feel an entire other life pulsing inside me. I see faces, hear voices, smell scents. Like the rose perfume from our first date, William ventured. Sarah froze. The botanical garden, she whispered. You spilled coffee on your new suit. William laughed softly, tears in his eyes. And you used your ridiculously expensive silk scarf to try to clean it up. And then we both said at the same time that it was a sign from destiny. They finished together. The twins watched the interplay in fascination, their little heads turning from one to the other as though watching a tennis match. It's like magic, Olivia whispered to her sister, loud enough for all to hear. It's not magic, Sarah replied, opening her arms to embrace the girls. It's love, the kind of love that even forgetfulness can't completely erase. She looked at William over the twins' heads, her eyes a mixture of recognition and uncertainty. There's still so much I don't remember, so much that doesn't make sense. We have time, he assured her gently, and now we have help. He smiled at the twins, who beamed back at him. Outside the library, the convent bell tolled, announcing lunchtime. The sound seemed to spark another memory in Sarah. Church bells, she murmured. Our wedding. It was in a little church, right? With a garden full of daisies. William nodded, rendered speechless by emotion. The memories kept flooding back, sometimes like a gentle rain, sometimes like an overwhelming storm. But now Sarah was no longer alone to face them. She had William, she had the twins, and all the time in the world to reclaim not just her memories, but her life. A life she was beginning to see had always been extraordinary, not despite its contradictions, but because of them. Morning was bright and cool as Sarah finished packing her small bag. There wasn't much to take. Some simple dresses, her notebook, and the gardening tools she'd received from the nuns. Standing in the middle of the modest convent room, she took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. All set, Sister Maria's gentle voice came from the doorway. Sarah turned, tears in her eyes. How can I thank you for everything you've done? The nun approached, taking Sarah's hands in hers. Keep planting gardens, my dear. Keep spreading hope wherever you go. Outside, William waited in the car with the twins. Emily and Olivia had insisted on making colourful signs that read, "Welcome back," in crooked letters decorated with drawn flowers. We'll take care of your garden here, Sister Maria promised as they walked to the car. It will always be your special place. Sarah paused one last time to look at the garden of dreams too she had created. The flowers swayed gently in the morning breeze, as if waving goodbye. Ready to go home? Olivia asked excitedly when Sarah got into the car. Home. The word echoed in Sarah's mind, heavy with meaning and memories still blurry. The drive was quiet, punctuated only by the occasional remark from the twins about the scenery. Sarah watched the landscape change gradually, the simple suburban streets giving way to wider avenues, buildings growing taller on the horizon. When the car finally stopped at the imposing gates of the Morrison mansion, Sarah felt her stomach twist. It's so big, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. William, who had been watching her reaction in the rearview mirror, spoke gently. We can go slow, one room at a time. The twins practically jumped out of the car, eager to show Sarah around. Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, waited at the main entrance, tears in her eyes at the sight of her former employer. The foyer was impressive, with a marble floor and a crystal chandelier. Sarah hesitated on the threshold, momentarily overwhelmed by the mansion's grandeur. Let's see the garden first, Emily suggested, sensing Sarah's discomfort. It's your favorite place. They crossed through the house to the back, where an expansive garden stretched out. Sarah felt something stir inside her at the sight of the climbing roses and a small wrought-iron bench under a pergola. You used to spend hours here, William commented softly. I said it was your refuge when the world became too heavy. Sarah approached the rose bushes, her fingers gently touching the petals. I remember planting these. They were small cuttings then. And now they're huge, Olivia exclaimed. Just like the kids you helped, they grew strong because you took care of them. The girl's simple observation made Sarah smile through her tears. Gradually, they explored the house. Each room brought new sensations, fragments of memory. In the kitchen, the smell of spices triggered recollections of long afternoons cooking. In the library, the touch of old books made her heart race with familiarity. "This was your reading nook." William showed her an armchair by the window. "You always said it had the perfect light for reading." Sarah hesitated before sitting down. The soft upholstery felt like an embrace, like an old friend welcoming her home. "Is there any hot chocolate?" she asked suddenly, surprising everyone. I used to drink hot chocolate here, right? On rainy days. With tiny marshmallows," the twins chimed in unison. Mrs. Peters quickly obliged, making special hot chocolate served in the same porcelain cup Sarah used to love. The master bedroom was the hardest. Sarah stopped at the doorway, feeling like an intruder in her own space. "We don't have to go in now," William said gently. "You can stay in the guest room if you prefer." But Emily and Olivia had already run in, jumping onto the big four-poster bed. "Look, Sarah," Emily called, pointing to a photo on the nightstand. "It's us in the Garden of Dreams." "You always kept pictures of all the kids you helped." Sarah approached slowly, picking up the framed photo. It showed the twins, younger, smiling and holding their inseparable toys, the same teddy bear and doll they carried to this day. "You two have grown so much," she murmured, touching the glass of the frame. "But we're still the same," Olivia said, hugging Sarah's waist. "Just like you. You might look different on the outside, but you're still you on the inside." William stood by the door, his heart tight with emotion. He wanted so badly to help Sarah remember everything, but he knew he had to respect her pace and her process. "How about a picnic in the garden?" he suggested, noticing Sarah seemed a bit overwhelmed. "Like we used to on Sundays." Sarah's eyes lit up with a flash of recognition. "With cucumber sandwiches and pink lemonade?" "Exactly that," William smiled. While Mrs. Peters prepared the picnic basket, Sarah wandered around the house, touching objects, absorbing sensations. The twins followed her like little protective shadows, ready to distract her if the emotion became too intense, or to celebrate every recovered memory. In the garden, sitting on a checkered blanket with sandwiches and lemonade, they almost looked like a regular family. Almost. "You know," Sarah said after a contemplative silence, "maybe it doesn't matter so much to remember everything exactly as it was. Maybe the important thing is creating new memories, keeping what truly matters from the past." William felt his heart swell with love and admiration. Even in her confusion, even torn between two worlds, Sarah was still Sarah, wise, strong, incredibly resilient. "What do you think really matters?" he asked softly. Sarah looked at the twins playing among the flowers, at the garden she herself had created, and finally at William. "Love," she answered simply, "and the courage to start over, even when the path isn't clear." Morning light filtered through the silk curtains of the library, creating golden patterns on the Persian rug. Sarah sat on the floor, surrounded by photo albums, with Emily and Olivia helping her explore each page. "Look at this one," Olivia exclaimed, pointing to a photo of Sarah, elegantly dressed, smiling alongside a group of children at a charity event. "You always helped people, even before." Sarah ran her fingers gently over the photograph. "It seems some things never changed, right? Even when I lost my memory, I was still trying to help people." William, watching from a nearby armchair, smiled kindly. "No one could stop you from trying to make the world a better place. Even in business meetings, you'd always ask how we could use our resources to help the community." "And this one?" Emily asked, turning the page. The photo showed Sarah in a different garden, smaller and simpler than the current one. "Looks like the start of our garden." "It was my first gardening project," William explained, leaning closer. "You just moved in here and said the mansion needed more life. You started with a few rose seedlings, and now it's a whole forest," Olivia added, making everyone laugh. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, allowing the memory to flow. "I remember the smell of wet earth, my hands dirty. You complained that I tracked mud all over the house, but it was always worth it," William grinned. Every blossom was a small victory that you celebrated like it was the biggest thing in the world. As they flipped through more albums, Sarah kept discovering other parts of her old life, photos of trips, social events, everyday moments. Each image was another piece of the puzzle of her identity. "Sometimes it feels strange," she admitted, closing one of the albums. "Seeing this person in the photos, me, but so different, elegant, sophisticated. But with the same heart," Emily said wisely, taking Sarah's hand. "You just wore different clothes on the outside." Sarah hugged the little girl, moved by her simple yet profound perspective. Later, in the kitchen, while they made cookies together, a Sunday tradition the twins insisted on reviving, Sarah suddenly stopped rolling the dough. "William," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I think I want to go back to helping again. Not just in this garden, but out there where people really need it." William put down the cookie sheet he was holding and approached her. "I figured you would. Actually, I have a surprise for you." He pulled a folder from his briefcase and handed it to Sarah. Inside were documents detailing the creation of a new foundation, Gardens of Hope Foundation. "It's yours," he explained as she read the pages, her eyes wide. "To do any volunteer work you want, but now with proper resources and structure, we can expand all those little community gardens you created, help more people." Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. You did this for me." "For us," he corrected gently. "For our family. And for all the people you'll still help." The twins jumped up and down with excitement, already making big plans. "We can build a garden of dreams in every neighborhood," Emily exclaimed. "And take food to everyone who needs it," Olivia added. Sarah looked at William, a new light shining in her eyes. "You've really changed, haven't you? The William I see in the old photos seemed so focused only on business. You taught me to see beyond the numbers," he replied honestly. "And when you disappeared, I realized there was so much more to life than financial statements." That afternoon, they visited the old Garden of Dreams. The place looked a bit neglected, but the flowers Sarah had planted were still fighting to grow through the concrete. "We can start here," Sarah said, already kneeling to inspect the plants. "Make it something even bigger and better." William watched as she and the twins made plans, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. It was as though everything had come full circle, not returning to what it was before, but creating something new and just as special. Back at the mansion, after the twins were asleep, Sarah found William in his office, working on details for the foundation. "There's something I want to show you," she said hesitantly. She handed him her notebook from the hospital, open to a specific page. "I found this today, rereading my notes from when I had no memory." William read the passage she indicated. "Sometimes I dream of a man. I don't see his face clearly, but I feel an inexplicable longing. He smiles in my dreams and says that some people are destined to find each other, no matter how many lives they live. I used to say that," William whispered, recognizing his own words, "on our wedding day." Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "Even when I didn't know who I was, even without my memories, my heart still remembered you." William stood up and embraced her, feeling as though all the pieces were finally falling into place. "You know what else I found today?" Sarah asked, her voice muffled against his chest. She pulled away and took something out of her pocket, a small key. "From your old office at the company," William recognized immediately. "I think it's time to find out why I really disappeared," she said with determination. "There's something important there, isn't it? Something I was investigating." William hesitated a moment, torn between wanting to protect her and respecting her decision. "Tomorrow," he finally promised. "Tomorrow we'll go to your office together. But for now, can we just enjoy this moment? Our family is finally back together." Sarah smiled and nodded, putting the key away. There would be time for mysteries and investigations. Tonight, she just wanted to feel at home with the people she loved, building a new life that somehow honored both her past and present. From the twins' bedroom came the soft sound of their sleeping breaths. In the garden, the roses swayed in the night breeze, and there, in William's arms, Sarah finally felt that all her different versions, the businesswoman, the street volunteer, the convent gardener, were merging into one person. a person who was at last complete. The Morrison mansion had changed over the past few weeks. The echo of childish laughter now filled previously silent corridors, and the aroma of homemade cookies often drifted through the kitchen, but adjusting wasn't always easy, and each day brought its own challenges. Sarah was in the kitchen trying to prepare breakfast when the first hiccup of the day appeared. The massive, well-equipped cabinets, which should have been familiar, felt intimidating. "Where are the pans?" she muttered to herself, opening and closing doors. "Third cabinet on the right," William responded softly, entering the kitchen. He hesitated before adding, "But you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Mrs. Peters can—" "I want to," Sarah interrupted gently. "I need to make this house feel like mine again, even if it's one pan at a time." William smiled, admiring her determination. It was one of those many moments that reminded him of the Sarah he knew, strong, resilient, and decisive. The twins ran into the kitchen, still in their pajamas, carrying their inseparable toys. "Sarah, look!" Emily exclaimed, showing her a drawing. "I made a plan for our next garden of dreams." The paper was full of colorful flowers and what looked like an improvised playground. In the corner, little stick figures represented children at play. "It's beautiful, sweetie," Sarah smiled, taking the drawing. "But where exactly did you want to build this garden?" "The empty lot near our old bakery," Olivia answered for her sister. "There are a bunch of kids there who have nowhere to play." William, who would normally be absorbed in his tablet checking emails, surprised everyone. "We can look up the property records for that lot today. If it's for sale, the foundation can buy it." Sarah looked at him with tearful eyes. This new William, balancing business with compassion, amazed her every day. Later, in William's office, they discussed details for the Gardens of Hope Foundation. Sarah perched on the edge of his desk, as she used to years ago, studying blueprints of possible sites for new projects. "Sometimes I wonder," she said softly, "if losing my memory wasn't in some way a gift." William lifted his gaze from the documents he was reviewing, surprised. "How do you mean?" "It let me see the world from a completely different perspective, to really understand what it's like to have nothing, to rely on the kindness of others." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "And now, having both experiences, I can do so much more." William stood, walking around the desk to stand beside her. "You've always made a difference, Sarah. It's just that now we have a clearer vision of how to do it together." Out in the garden, the twins were helping Sarah plant new seedlings, even wearing the expensive clothes Mrs. Peters had bought for them. They didn't hesitate to get their knees dirty in the soil. "You know what's funny?" Olivia commented as she dug a hole for a daisy seedling. "We live in this giant house now, but we still want to help the other street kids." "Because we know what it's like," Emily added wisely. "And Aunt Rose always says that if you've been helped, you need to help others afterward." Sarah felt her heart swell with pride. Even with all the comfort they now had, the girls hadn't lost their empathy and compassion. That evening, after the twins had gone to bed, Sarah found William in the library. He was looking at old photos of them, a habit he'd developed in the years she'd been gone. "I miss certain things," she admitted, sitting beside him, "like the simplicity of the convent, the direct work on the streets." "We can incorporate that into our life," William replied, intertwining his fingers with hers. "We don't have to choose one or the other. We can have both." Sarah rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent that still made her heart flutter, even if her mind didn't recall everything perfectly. "Sometimes I'm scared," she whispered. "Scared I'm not enough, neither the old Sarah nor the new one." William turned to her, gently holding her face between his hands. "You're more than enough. You're extraordinary in all your versions." The next morning, William surprised everyone by showing up at breakfast in jeans and a simple t-shirt instead of his usual Italian suit. "I thought I'd help with the new garden project today," he announced, earning shrieks of joy from the twins. They spent the entire day working together, transforming an abandoned lot into something special. Williams, who had never before dirtied his hands in the soil, found an unexpected satisfaction in seeing the first seedlings planted. "Now I see why you love this so much," he told Sarah, watching the twins water the newly planted flowers. "It's like creating life from nothing," Sarah smiled, remembering something. That's what you told me on our wedding day, that our love was like a garden we needed to tend every day. William froze, surprised by the specific memory. You remembered. Some memories come back like that, she explained, like flowers blooming when you least expect it. As the weeks passed, the mansion evolved. William's formal office now had colorful drawings by the twins pinned to the walls. The once pristine kitchen was often messy from new recipe attempts. The garden expanded, with experimental flower beds where the girls could learn about different plants. One evening at dinner, Emily made a comment that touched them all. It's funny, before, we didn't have a home, but we had Sarah. Then we had Aunt Rose, but we didn't have Sarah. Now we have everyone together, and William too. And you know what's best, Olivia added. We can help other kids find families too. Sarah and William exchanged emotional glances. In their childlike wisdom, the twins had perfectly summarized everyone's journey, a journey of loss, discovery, and at last, wholeness. Tomorrow we're visiting Aunt Rose, Sarah announced. We'll show her our plans to turn the diner into a community center as well. With a library, Emily exclaimed. And a rooftop garden, Olivia chimed in. William smiled, pulling Sarah close. And so, one dream at a time, we'll keep changing the world. Sarah looked at her unlikely family, the husband who had rediscovered the true meaning of success, the twins who had taught them all about resilience and unconditional love, and herself, a woman who had once been lost only to find a more complete version of who she was. You know something, she said softly. I think I've finally found the balance I was always searching for. We don't have to choose between doing good and living well. We can do both, as long as our hearts are in the right place. The twins nodded solemnly, as if fully understanding her words. And maybe they did, because in the end love and compassion are languages even children comprehend perfectly. The Morrison Mansion's garden had never looked more beautiful than on that spring afternoon, 6 months after Sarah's return. Flowers of every color adorned the space, and a large white tent had been set up for the celebration. It wasn't just any party, it was the twins' birthday as well as the official celebration of their adoption. Sarah watched the preparations from the veranda, her heart overflowing with emotion. Her memories had gradually returned over the months, some crystal clear, others still hazy, like half-forgotten dreams. But it no longer bothered her. She had learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find something even more precious. A penny for your thoughts, William said softly, coming up behind her and wrapping her in a hug. Sarah smiled, leaning back against him. I was thinking how funny life is. A year ago, I was living on the streets, with no memory, trying to help people with what little I had. Now you're still helping people, William finished, only with more resources and even more love. The sound of laughter caught their attention. Emily and Olivia ran through the garden, overseeing the decorations with a comical level of seriousness. Their party dresses, somewhere between fancy and practical, fluttered as they moved. Tommy, watch those flowers, Emily called out to a boy helping with the decorations. He was one of the many youths the Gardens of Hope Foundation had rescued from the streets, giving them a fresh start. The foundation had grown exponentially in recent months. What began as small community gardens now included support centers, educational programs, and employment initiatives. William had surprised everyone by restructuring part of his business to incorporate social projects. Remember when you said I couldn't save the world alone? Sarah asked, turning to face her husband. And you said someone had to try, William smiled. Now we're trying together. William's transformation was remarkable. The businessman, once focused solely on profit, was now known for his strategic philanthropy. His boardroom meetings often took place in community project sites, and his Italian suit regularly got dirty from working in gardens he helped build. Guests are starting to arrive, Mrs. Peters announced, stepping up to the couple. It was a unique blend of worlds, executives in expensive suits chatting with volunteers from social programs, street kids the foundation had helped playing alongside the children of corporate leaders, Aunt Rose, still running her diner, now renovated as part of a community center, served her famous homemade cookies on silver trays. Sarah, William, a familiar voice called. It was Sister Maria, who had travelled from the convent especially for the occasion. In her hands, she carried 2 small flower pots. "From our garden to theirs," the nun smiled, presenting the gifts. The twins ran over to hug the sister, their voices overlapping in excitement as they told her about their latest garden projects. "And we're teaching other kids too," Olivia explained proudly. "Just like Sarah used to do with us," Emily added. The party was a resounding success. There were moments of sweet irony, like when a high-profile CEO received a lesson on growing daisies from an 8-year-old girl in the social program, or when Tommy, now a budding gardener, explained complex irrigation systems to a group of impressed investors. The most emotional moment, though, was Sarah's impromptu speech. "A year ago," she began, her voice carrying across the quiet garden, "I didn't know who I was. I lived in the shadows, trying to do what little I could for others who, like me, were lost. Today, thanks to 2 little heroes who saved not only William's life, but our souls as well. We're all here united." She paused, looking for the twins' hands as they came forward. Emily and Olivia showed us that family isn't just about blood or memories. It's about love, choice, and the courage to start over. William showed me it's never too late to change, to see the world through different eyes. And all of you, she gestured to the diverse crowd, prove that there are no barriers love and compassion can't break down. William joined her, his eyes shining with emotion. "Today, we're not just celebrating our daughter's birthday or their official adoption," he continued. "We're celebrating a new beginning. A world where gardens can bloom through concrete, where second chances are possible, and where a family can be formed in the most unexpected moments." In their childlike wisdom, the twins added their own perspective. "We learned that sometimes you have to get lost to find yourself," Emily said, "and that the best gifts don't always come in pretty boxes," Olivia concluded. As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the garden, guests said their goodbyes. Some returned to luxurious penthouses, others to modest homes, but all left with a new outlook on what truly matters in life. Sarah, William, and the twins stayed in the garden until nightfall, sitting on the grass among the flowers they had planted together. "You know what's funny?" Sarah reflected, watching the first stars appear. "When I lost my memory, I thought I'd lost everything, but actually, I was just making room to gain so much more." William gently squeezed her hand. "Sometimes we need to lose ourselves to find our true path. And sometimes," Emily said sleepily, "you have to save someone to be saved yourself." "Like that day on the street," Olivia yawned, snuggling closer to Sarah. The twins fell asleep right there in the garden, still holding their inseparable companions, the teddy bear and the doll that had witnessed their entire journey. Sarah and William watched their daughters slumber, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. "One single moment changed everything," William whispered. "One single act of kindness," Sarah agreed. "And now, look how many gardens have grown from it." Above them, the stars glittered in a spring sky, silent witnesses to a story proving that love, hope, and second chances can transform not just lives, but the entire world, one garden at a time. And so at the Morrison Mansion, a family that began with one brave act by 2 little girls continued on its journey, showing that happy endings aren't just for fairy tales. Sometimes they happen in real life, especially when we have the courage to believe and the strength to begin again.